Are you trying to animate water but have no idea how to start? The best way to hand draw an animation sequence is by first breaking down the exact movement that you want, frame by frame. In this video, I'll show you how Disney artists animate water step by step by studying and drawing a splash sequence from Pocahontas using the straight ahead animation method in Krita. This was like a really cool example to show how Disney animators for 2D animation kind of ran through how to do splash sequence. So we'll be kind of using this as a template and kind of as a guide to how we're going to be doing a splash sequence. We got the initial drop. I'm going to be animating a stone hitting the water. Then we got the water going up to reach its max height. So that's the second part. So I guess first part is going to be the stone. Second part is going to be the funnel and then height. And then the fall down, this little thing that comes up, the little splash. We'll just call it the splash. And then resting, where it's just kind of starts rippling. So it's the ripple. And here is a very quick template that I've made so far on how I'll be animating. So here you can see on my layers panel, I have a few different sections. I've got a layer labeled splash, a layer labeled ball, and this stone is going to be falling down. But you can see here that in group 3, I've actually created a kind of these guide points for my ball or my stone and the ripple of the water itself. So this middle line over here, this is going to be basically the trajectory of where my stone is going to be falling down. My stone is going to be kind of maybe off page over here somewhere. And then over the course of 3 frames, it's going to be falling down and then hitting the water like somewhere like right over here. And it's going to be following that vertical line that I have right in the middle. And then once it hits the water, remember the second part is the funnel. And so that's why I have these curves over here. I'm kind of indicating to myself as to the size of the funnel roughly, just so I have a kind of rough guiding point to show me where and how wide the funnel should expand to. So when the ball first hits the water, it's probably going to be like this, and then it's going to expand just a little bit. And then I'm going to use these curves as a guide. As I add more and more frames, I'm going to start following these curves to help guide my funnel. These guides are just going to stay there. And just to be safe, I've locked the layer. So maybe I'll rename this as like my guide. This way, I don't accidentally move it or delete it or edit it. And then as the funnel, remember, it starts expanding, it's going to fall down. And as it's falling down, it's going to start widening even more. And when it falls down, I have these circumference rings over here to, again, give me a rough estimation as to where this water might fall to. And then we're going to hit our last part, which is the ripple part. And going to try to animate a little bit of it. You want to give yourself an understanding of rhythm, and sometimes if we're animating, like let's say a ball dropping down, depending on how heavy the ball is, like let's say this is like a normal tennis ball, this ball will probably take about 5 or 7 frames. And you might be like, okay, well, how did I know it takes about that much time? Well, half a second is 12 frames. Did the ball take half a second to drop down to the ground? No, it was a bit faster than half a second. So it's kind of a little bit of guesstimating, where you're guessing and roughly estimating how much time. It's not going to be perfect. Also, it depends on how high the ball is, but if it's like, let's say, just from your head to your waist, it might be about like 7 to 10 frames. Probably going to be really quick. And then you just run it through and you just test it out. Does it feel right? Does it feel a little bit off? And if it does, then you just shorten it. If it's going too fast, add an extra frame. Okay, so we're going to start with the ball off screen. So frame 1 is probably going to be off. And in order to not spend too much time animating, I'm probably just going to animate on every other frame. So I'm just going to jump to frame 3. And this is like a stone. So I'm just going to draw a really simple stone. We have a stone. I'm also going to turn on onion skin. I'm just going to duplicate this one over here, and I'm going to move it straight down to roughly around there. Seems good. And we'll just expand upon the look of this stone. Okay, just duplicating that again, and then moving it straight down to, let's say at this point it hits the water. This is where I'll also maybe add the splash. Now the water, we're gonna animate this in blue just so it's easier to tell. It's gonna hit there. We're gonna have a little bit of a starting splash. So probably gonna add water coming up here. And the water, again, I'm just gonna keep it somewhat simple. Okay, so this is gonna go, we'll put it maybe roughly here. It's gonna be a big splash. I mean, it's a stone dropping in, so the velocity and the amount of speed that it has to hit the water is gonna be quite big. When I'm looking at this kind of master study by the Disney animators when they're doing the Pocahontas splash, I can see that they have a little bit of an ellipse. They have a bit of perspective going on when they're drawing out the splash sequence, and it kind of looks like a crown. And the great thing about organic stuff like water or fire or hair, that kind of stuff, you don't have to follow the previous frame to a T, just because, you know, it's organic, it's going to be constantly shifting. Now these gaps I'm noticing that they've added in here, it's kind of neat because basically water, it's kind of like a thin layer, so you know, it's going to be splashing up a little bit. So right now we only have one splash frame, so not too much to work off of. I'm noticing that for the splash up, when it goes up, it doesn't really expand too much more anymore, but it just goes a bit higher. And that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm just gonna have the splash go a bit higher and kind of widen out a little bit, but for the most part I'm gonna be following the trajectory and angle that this water had. Just gonna start adding some splashes and a few more breaking away in the water. We're gonna start expanding the ripple a little bit outwards, just a little bit. And so that's why I have this kind of circumference around it. It helps give me a rough guide as to where the ripples might be. It's probably a bit too fast right now, but you know what? It's not too, it's okay. Might be a bit overly detailed right now, but it's not too bad. What I'm noticing for the splash in Pocahontas is that as the splash gets higher and starts going outwards, it starts curving out a little bit over here. It starts kind of curving out. I think it's to help prep for the whole umbrella element as it's coming down. I'm gonna add these extra, I don't know, these pops to the water coming up. So if I play it right now, this is what we have. It's definitely it feels a little bit mechanical. Might have to readjust the timing of it. The motion is there, and the trajectory of the splash is kind of there, but I think the momentum isn't quite there. But we'll worry about it as we keep going frame by frame. I am seeing is that the water is starting to ease in a little bit. So this one, like you can see, these are some big changes in motion. So from here to here, that's a pretty big height jump. And then from here, it starts to slow down. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to ease in the motion while slowly starting to settle in the water into that kind of upside down umbrella shape, so that when it falls down, I've already started easing into it. And I'm noticing that there's more breaking of water particles. Okay, I feel like this is a good amount of splashing. You know what, I'm just gonna add a blank frame for the ball. I'm like, you should not see the stone anymore. Easing out and in is one of the core principles of animation, and it's how you make something look natural in its movement. Easing out is how you slowly build up momentum towards a faster speed, while easing in is slowing down that momentum and sometimes even to a full stop. And when you put the two together, you get easing out and easing in, a combo that essentially captures how almost everything moves from animals to humans and even birds to cars. And I'm just gonna add a few more like just side ripples. And again, let's just see how this looks. Hey, this isn't looking too bad. Again, a little bit mechanical, but part of it's like the speed. So far, not too bad. So you can see now I'm like really starting to push towards that bell or the upside down umbrella shape of the water, and I'm starting to break up the pieces a little bit more so that I'm easing into that kind of funnel shape. I think I should actually break up this ripple at this point, make it a little bit back to its original shape, which the water ripples fade away after a certain point. I forgot to diminish the ripples as they come out, and I think that's what made it look a little bit too like mechanical, was that the ripples were kind of moving in a very, very consistent rate. You'll start to notice that my drawings are getting a little bit messier because I'm channeling the wildness of the water. It's gonna start breaking up a little bit more, expanding until the water starts to get thinner, because this kind of quote-unquote wall of the water is basically this really thin veil. And so as the water is moving, it's gonna kind of break apart, it's gonna stick together. Yeah, and you can see like right now as I'm drawing more and more frames, I'm actually gonna start checking it a little bit more just to make sure it all still feels overall okay. The water is gonna start coming back down. I think I've eased it enough, so I'm gonna start having these water particles break, and my water is gonna start falling down. These gaps are slowly gonna break apart and thinning out more and more as gravity is pulling the water back down. You can see that like I'm breaking up the big parts into those droplets, so that's kind of how you show a sense of like the suspension and weight of the water breaking up apart, getting a bit more of that organic, unpredictable aspect that we've been kind of talking about. And I'm just gonna take away some of the splashes now because I think there were way too many, and then I'm gonna start adding the ripple again. I'm gonna have this ripple start disappearing a little bit more. So now I'm gonna really start shortening it. It's starting to fall down, and I think they're holding the pose actually quite a bit. I'm actually gonna reconnect this water at the bottom, and maybe we'll add a little bit of a opening over here now. Water is kind of interesting because you have to think about like, oh, how is it moving? How is it kind of easing and easing out, easing in, all that kind of stuff, while keeping track of the trajectory and momentum of the water. So it's kind of neat. I'm gonna start curving it kind of outwards like this for all of the momentum of the water as well. See how it looks. Hey, yeah, does not look too bad. As the water is kind of splashing down, it's gonna pull down more. I might pull this down even more now. So I'm gonna start bell curving it more at this point, and I'm gonna start kind of actually connecting some of these portions together. The straight ahead method is great for tackling anything that's unpredictable. It's used a lot for fire, hair, bubble, smoke, and in this case, water. To animate with straight ahead, you simply animate one frame at a time in a chronological order, hence the name, straight ahead. In contrast, with pose to pose, you move back and forth on the animation timeline. You insert a drawing maybe on frame 1 and then move to frame 50, then maybe back to 25 and then frame 40. Pose to pose is great for planned out poses and does not necessarily follow a clean chronological approach. And this is why straight ahead is great for unpredictable things. It's great for tracking the organic flow and movement of objects without being too rigid. It'll make your animation feel a lot more fluid and natural. This tutorial is cut from a 2-hour live stream, which I'll link in the description if you want to see me animate in real time. If you want to learn hand-drawn illustration techniques, we live stream free art lessons every week. Subscribe to vote for what you'd like to see us draw next, and hit that bell to be notified whenever we go live. I think it definitely didn't make it fall. I think it's falling too slow. The splash got big, but you know, I think I'm gonna take away some frames. I think here is when it should start falling. You know, I'm gonna take this one away. Let's see how that goes. It didn't really change too much. Yeah, it's hovering in the air a bit too long. Okay. But I think I'm gonna try to do a little bit of a straight ahead. Let's see. I'm gonna just draw a very extreme in the future type of splash and see if that kind of matches the momentum of the splash. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, that's a bit too fast because these droplets kind of disappeared, so getting the momentum. It's definitely helped that I've taken away a few frames, so I took away some frames around here. Yeah, that falling motion just was not, it was just too slow. I'm gonna make this blip smaller because it kind of felt like it popped out of nowhere. It's definitely a little bit better now that the water's coming down a little bit faster. It's giving that like almost satisfying like splash where everything is finally hitting the surface of the water. But now's the hard part where I have to kind of animate this weirdly shaped kind of crown where the water hits surface and this thing starts coming up. It eases in, and then as it goes higher, it goes really, really high up of the splash. Ease in some of the lines a bit more so that the transition is a bit easier to take note of. I'm gonna duplicate this one and just have this be a bit higher. If you want to try this animation exercise yourself, download my free animation kit. Get my template, working file complete with layers and timing, and the references I use so you can animate your own water splash. When it's falling down, I could have it go into ones. Actually, yeah, let's try that. Let's see. And then maybe we go back to 2s for this one. I'm just experimenting with spacing. Instead of redrawing everything, just kind of experiment. Let's see. You know what? Oh, you know what? This actually kind of works. Okay, I'm gonna put this into 1s, and also let's see how this turns out. Let me space it out. We're at a point where we're just experimenting with space and time. So we're gonna call it here. You know, in the end, came up to around 17 drawings. So for a splash sequence, that's not too bad. It's definitely on the rougher part. There's a lot of cleanup to go into this, would clean up the splashing, and especially like the kind of glittering, kind of speckling effect that's happening around like frame 20, like 15 to 20. If you're looking for motivation and art accountability, join our Art Nerd community on Discord for monthly challenges, art critique, and more free resources to keep you creating.